Chapter 24, the Causatives, the Hifil and the Hafal. In this chapter, again, you want to make sure you know chapter 22 very well. And so we're just going to do a quick review of that. And so if you look at section 2, I will review basically what I placed there. You have the Hifil, and of course the Hifil is only in the perfect, but you have a Hafil outside of the perfect. So again, you can see the Hurik of the Hifil in the perfect, but then you see the Patach of the Hafil in the rest of the conjugations here. Notice again the H in the perfect, or the He in the perfect, in the imperative, and in the infinitive. But notice that the Yod and the Mem supplant, or the Yod standing for the Eitan letters of the imperfect, and the Mem of the participle. And again, you get the silent schwa under R1 throughout the conjugation. Now, when you look at the colors of the conjugation, you can see again that you have Patach is dominating in the perfect, but you can get a Hurik Yod, historic long Hurik Yod, in all the threes, 3MS, 3FS, 3CP. When you get to the imperfect and the imperative, again, the Hurik Yod dominates with just a little bit of Seire. You get the Seire in your second and your third feminine plural. When you get to the infinitives and participles, they're all green, but you have to watch out because the absolute, you get the Seire, but in the construct and in the participle, you'll get, again, the historic long Hurik Yod. So, again, you want to remember those things. Also, we have the Hafal, and so we want to look at the Hafal for just a moment. The Hafal, again, has the characteristic H with the Kametz Chatuf and the silent schwa, and you'll see the silent schwa all the way through, and also the Kametz Chatuf all the way through. But the Yod and the Mem, again, is supplanting the H. And again, there is no imperative infinitives. The infinitives are very rare, and the imperatives do not exist because, again, the Hafal is a passive conjugation, and as such, it's a kami. And that's why we get red, as you see there. For your participle, you get irreducible long kametz. And so remember never to reduce the kametz of the Hafal. All right, for the Hifil, there are some special forms that you do need to know. There's some special Seire forms. And there are basically 4 Seire forms that you need to know. And that is for your jussives. So far, what you've learned is that the jussive form and the imperfect form are identical. And so if you remember back to the call, you have a form like a yiktol. And this could be the imperfect or the jussive. Here in the Hifil, we're going to see that for the first time there is a distinction to be made. Here's a Hifil. Let me just use katal again. Yaktil. This would be the imperfect. But if you wanted to make this into a jussive, you want a Seire here. And so you see for the first time a real distinction between the jussive form and the imperfect form here in the Hifil. And so your jussive singulars, namely your 3MS and your 2MS jussives, will have this Seire, and you just simply have to know that. So that's a sort of a memorized form. Another form that's going to be true is the Vav consecutive form. Again, in the call, the imperfect form, yiktol, looks just like vayiktol. They're identical forms between your imperfect and then you just put on the Vav consecutive. Same form. This is not going to be true again in the Hifil. In the Hifil, we're going to have, again, yaktil, like this. But when you put the Vav consecutive form on, you're going to have a special Seire form. And again, this is mostly for your 3MS, and you possibly could get it for like a 2MS. But if you go to the plurals, you're going to go back to the Hurik Yod. So again, in the jussives and in the Vav consecutive, if you go plural, you'll go back to the Hurik Yod forms. But in the singular, we're going to have a distinction. We're going to have a special Seire form. Another special Seire form, the third of them, occurs with the imperative. And so with your imperative, you would expect a heroic yod according to the charts, the vowel chart I gave you, the colors. But for your 2ms, you're going to get a special serif form. So you've got to remember that. In a hifil, imperative, 2ms, we're going to have a special serif form. And we're going to have a special serif form for your infinitive absolute. And again, you've really basically learned that, but we're also going to consider that one of the special serif forms. And the infinitive absolute looks identical to this form here, the imperative that I have drawn. Okay, so now we're ready to, again, create forms and to parse forms. And so let's now look at section 3. And for that, we will do number 1, the hifil perfect 3CP of Catal. And again, the first thing we want to do is boxes. And tell you what, for space purposes, we'll just do each step and then erase it. The first is the boxes. Now, with a hifil, you have a hifil in the perfect, but you have a hafil everywhere else. We're looking at a perfect, so we want to go with a hifil. So this is your boxes. And then what I would write to the right of this is the root with the box here attached. So that's the first step. The next step is the colors. And so, again, with your hifil, remember, patach, or the red, dominates in the perfect, but the I here is for all threes, okay? All threes here. And then the imperfect imperative, I always want you to write these out. It's great review for you. Obviously, you're going to have heroic yod dominating, and then for your second and third plural, you'll go back to a sere. But we're looking at a 3CP, so this is what we want right here. We want a heroic yod. And so what I would do again is write to the right of the colors. I would put the box on it, and then this time I'd put in the heroic yod. And now we need to make a call. So now we simply turn the hifil perfect 3CP into a call perfect 3CP. And again, you want to write the call every time. You've got to know the call just cold. I mean, you just got to know that, and that's very important. And what do we want off the call? We want what's behind it or what's in front of it. It's a perfect again. So I'm really interested in the shurek. That's what I'm going to put on my form. So let's now put it all together. Yeah, that's our root. And this would be our answer. Now, something I need to point out to you. You have a vocalic ending. And in all the conjugations, when you get a vocalic ending, you get reduction, except for the hifil. The hifil will never have reduction. You'll never reduce one of the thematic vowels of a hifil, because it's either going to be a patach in a closed unaccented syllable, so you can't touch that, or it's a historic long heroic yod, and you can't touch that either. And so you never reduce a thematic vowel in the hifil. And that's nice. That you get rid of all the schwa problems that you could have. So all I need to do is put on the shurek of my call. The color is the heroic yod because it's a perfect third person. And then here's the box on the front, and here's my answer. Okay. Next, we want to do some parsing. And this time, let's do the number 3. Let's do parsing of number 3. And what you have written is this word. Moktalim is what you have here, Moktalim. And so now what we want to do is we want to parse this word. And again, we're not going to try to just look at it and give an answer. We want to teach our mind to parse the same way every time, to create a form the same way every time. And if you'll train your mind to do that, it won't take long and you can look at words and just recognize them. But what you want to do is continually go after every problem the same way. If you do that, you won't freeze up on a test. You'll know, forget worrying about the answer, just sit there and systematically go through and follow the steps. And if you do that, you'll train your mind to think the proper way in doing it. So you have that form, and the first thing you want to do is you want to look for boxes. And again, boxes occur at the beginning of the word. And you know you're going to have three roots right now. So when you look at this word, you can see there's a lot there. And you look at the end of it, and you get that "eem" ending, and that is very suspicious. I mean, it looks very much like an adjective ending. And when you think of adjective endings and you're talking about verbs, immediately participle comes to mind. But I always sort of look at the end, look at the beginning. But once I've done that, I start working on the box. And what I see is a mem on the front, and immediately participle comes to mind. And under that, I see a Causatives, and then I see a silent schwa. And when I see that, immediately, Hafal participle has to come to mind. And so immediately, I've eliminated all forms like call, nifal, all those things are gone. I'm looking at a Hafal, and I can eliminate all the Hafals except the participle. So the next thing we want to do is still colors, because we may be wrong. We may have the boxes wrong, and the colors will help us confirm that we have the boxes correct. And so when we go to the next step, what do I see under R2? I see this nice, irreducible, long kamets. That's exactly what you would expect with a Hafal participle, an irreducible, long kamets. And even though there's an ending on it, and in the call, the PL, the hith-PL, you'll get reduction. Not in these forms that have irreducible kamets like your nifal, your pual, and here in the hafal. And so again, the colors are very helpful to me. And again, I'm not interested so much in the perfect, imperfect. That's not what I'm interested in. I know I've got a participle, or at least I think I have a participle, and sure enough, this would confirm it also. And even the ending confirms it. The ending you'll get again from your call. And I'd like you to write that form out. And again, you could use this time the call passive, since we're dealing with a passive word here. We're dealing with a hafal. So something like ketulim, and you get that lim, and of course that is your masculine plural absolute. And sure enough, that explains that. And so you have your answer. Your answer is a hafal participle masculine plural absolute from the root katal. So now we need to look at section 5 and discuss the meaning of the hifils and the hafals. Again, these are what they call causative stems. And so quite frequently when we translate hifils, we're going to say he caused, and then you usually have an object with the causatives. He caused someone to do something. But we better be careful, because not all hifils are we going to be able to use the word cause in it. And I give you an example, hishlich. If you look at that word there, it simply means to throw or cast. Now I'm sure originally it meant to cause something to go, or to impel or something like this. But over time it's just simply easier to translate it to throw or to cast and not get the word cause in there. But normally, the hifil is transitive, and by transitive we're saying it takes a direct object. And then you can see the example I give you. He caused the man to stumble. So again, he caused, and then somebody, here it's the man, to stumble. And so usually when you translate it, you can get the word cause in there. But sometimes the hifil is used without a direct object. And when that happens, we call this the intercausative, because the subject is also the object. And so you can see in my example there, Hishmin, he caused himself to become fat. That is, or you could just translate it, he became fat. But literally, he caused himself to become fat. The hafal, again, is simply the passive of the hifil. And so you can see the example there. The hifil is to cause someone to be an overseer. He was caused to be an overseer, or he was simply made an overseer, as you see in the examples given there. Well, that's it for chapter 24. The causatives, now you need to study the chapter diligently, and go to your exercises.